All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. We are welcoming Fanny from CADAF. Hi, Fanny. Nice to see you.
Hi, nice to be here.
And then we have Sylvain representing the DSL collection. Hi, Sylvain. Thank you for joining this panel. And Boris Magrini from Basel. Hi.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for inviting.
Okay, so thank you so much for being here today. We are going to be discussing gamification in arts, which is such a great topic, which is definitely part of the CADAF experience. So to start with, I would like to address the question of what does gamifying art mean to you in a more broad sense, you know, from a curatorial point of view, but also from a collection and a fair point of view. So the first question for all of you is, what does it mean to gamifying art? And maybe we can start from Fanny.
Thank you. I like the women first, my feminist side. So it's, I mean, gamification. I mean, it's a broad question. So I'll try to be focused on a few aspects, because for me, whenever you try to address a large audience and access more people than a small niche, this is something that a lot of other industries have used to really interest people first, because I think this is something that we sometimes forget with the art market. We always talk about VIPs and very important people, high net worth individual, but there are still people who like to be entertained. And I will always remember working for Collectrium before. Every time we were trying to add something a little fun, it was like, no, we can't. These people have like, you know, it has to be gray and white. This is it. And at the end of the day, it became like really, everything looks the same. Everything is like, you know, for these tools, they're like very bland. So I think this is like, we have to remember that we're still talking to people, even if they're VIPs, and they like to be entertained. And with gamification, we can reach more people.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And, you know, Boris, what does that mean to you in terms of curating art within a gallery environment? What does gamification in art means?
Well, when I heard the word gamification of art, I think about two things. One would be the process of making art more playful in order to engage a wider audience. So this would be for me a kind of almost, I wouldn't say negative approach, because it is not, but it would certainly be, I would consider it as a commercial or a communication strategy, right? So how do we make art more appealing to the masses, which is not something negative per se, but it's not something that I would be absolutely interested to discuss. But I would also think that gamification of art could be the process in which artists use gaming technology, or gaming strategies, or gaming softwares to produce art. And in this way, it's something that I find much more interesting to engage with. And this is something also that speaks to me and I find fascinating. There are a lot of artists today working with games, either by hacking games. I mean, it is something that has already started many years ago, but it's a process that I see it's very present nowadays. I'm currently working on an exhibition that we will show at HEC next year exactly on this topic. So I see these two definition of the word gamification of art. Although I wouldn't probably use that word.
If you have any other suggestion, I think we'll be very happy to discuss which one this could be. And you know, you've touched on a very important topic, which is, are we using games to create an experience that is actually coming from the technology and softwares that we use to create? Or do we use such technologies to reach a global audience? And I think this will be an interesting question to address to Sylvain, since the DSL collection is very much tuned in with what is happening within the technological sphere. So Sylvain, how's the DSL collection approaching the gamification of art?
First, I would like to say that gamification of art is a very touchy subject. Because for most of the people, and I was on the panel last week or 2 weeks ago, and I spoke about video games, and I had a very strong reaction of one of the panelists telling me that it was about commodification of art. So I would like to put into context a little bit, for me, what is gamification of art. First, gamification of art has not begun with the digital. It has begun by, by installation in places, when you see the Turbine Hall, when you see Team Lab, when you see Kusama, it's already a gamification of art. And if you look at the numbers, there was a survey in 2017 on why people go to museum. 71% of the people for culture track was for amusement, to have fun. So I think that art and I should say edutainment, education and entertainment is something very, very, very close. But for a certain number of people, going into this direction is to question the purity of what is an artwork. So this is the context in which we have been working with DSL. The other thing is that for me, gamification is about opening a new type of space. Like VR is a new type of space, like, Second Life was a new type of space. I think gamification is a new type of space. And in this space, what we are trying to reach with this space, first, I think like Boris said, and in a very right way, gamification is the use of techniques on how to make a screen very interactive, emotional, and also scalable. And I think this is very important, is to be capable with this tool to reach, I should say, another type of experience, another type of people. And the other thing which is very important for us is also today, if you look at numbers, Fortnite, they have 250 million people playing on Fortnite, and you just have a few millions going to visit museums. So I think it's very important to try to reach a new type of audience, at least to try to reach by using this tool. So this is why we've been now engaged for a video game. We're going to have a video game at the end of the year. We are working very hard on that. And I would be very interested to see the result of this game by the end of the year.
Thank you so
much. If I can add something to what Sylvain said, sorry to interrupt, Serena, but this is what you said is very true. This is very controversial when you talk about video games, and like it's like the artist is selling their soul to the devil if they work on a video game. What I've been very appreciative working more in digital art is, and we talked about that, Serena, last week, but it's like more the bridges between art and gaming, and this is kind of where they are amazing. I mean, artists come from more various background in digital art, so like scientists, developers, biologists, but a lot of gamers or graphic designers, and this is where yes, gaming is a huge industry, as you said, Sylvain, and it's like they're going to find jobs in that industry. And is it commodification? Is it like just making a living? And more the fact that like it's not just making a living, but they are amazing piece of art. There are stills, there are like drawings to prepare, and that is coming back into the art market, which is really, for me, very, very interesting.
I would also like to add that in the gaming, we are talking, what I was talking and what Sylvain, you were talking about, it's also about artists using games to make art, right? In 1,000 different ways, 1,000 different approaches. But there are also video games made as video games that are extremely creative, extremely also intellectual, also alternative in the way they are produced. There are such a sub-niche and many subgenres. I mean, you mentioned Fortnite, which is a blockbuster, but there are many, many video games that are created without the potential of making art, but are extremely interesting also from an intellectual point of view. So it's a huge field to discover, of course.
Yes, but for us, we do a little bit the same process every time. For instance, with VR, we have commissioned works using VR as a medium. But we also made a VR museum where people could experience our collection by using VR. And I think we will do the same thing with video games. There will be a space where people will be able to connect with the works of the collection and with a new type of experience, but also there will be also a video game where we will ask an artist to really use video game. But video game, for instance, I gave you a name, Fang Mengbo was.
I know, yeah.
And Fang Mengbo, we have collected his work, his first work. So, we have already collected video games by artists.
Absolutely, that's great. And yeah.
But what will be interesting to see in 2020, what an artist will do in the video game. But already we have video games in the collection.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, these are very great topics, and something that Sylvain touched upon is the fact that we are always somehow looking for experiences that are engaging. And, you've also mentioned about scalability and the fact that the education, so the learning process and the fun aspect should somehow be consistent in these experiences. So I would like also to address that. How can we somehow keep this experience as engaging as possible, since we are translating from the IRL environment into the URL environment? How can we still keep the engagement part possible, since we are losing partially the physicality of the space? Is that something that it is possible to replicate? Maybe Boris, this one, it could be for you, since you have a curatorial background.
Of course, this is a challenge. Every time you organize an exhibition and you open an exhibition in a physical space, it's always a challenge how to present digital works, right? Because we have some very known strategies, video projection, VR headsets, a screen with some, in the case of an interactive work, such as an interactive video game, you have the joystick or whatever, the controllers. But then there is also the question of the public around, because very often these interactive pieces are very personal. So there's one person at a time. So how do you engage the audience that is waiting to experience the piece? And how do you provide also a sensible experience that it's interesting? And I think there are no rules. Again, I think it's a discussion with the artist, how to present his or her work in the best way, what makes sense for him or for her. And very often the artists themselves are very much aware of this problem, and they already come up with some solutions that are extremely interesting. How to they can be very radical, or they can be also very creative. I don't know, think about Vance and Bovinkel, a German couple who works also with the virtual reality and interactive virtual reality pieces. They think about the setup in a very creative way that matches somehow the aesthetic of the virtual environment. In the case of a purely digital exhibition, I know, Sylvain, you also have an exhibition, a virtual exhibition on your website, very interesting. That's a challenge again. Do we mimic a physical space to give the impression, as in Second Life, for example, the experiment that have been done to create exhibition on Second Life? Or do we go for a purely, I think there is room for experimentation. I think there is possibility to go beyond the simple mimicking of the real space within the virtual space. And again, I don't think there are rules. I think there is a room for experimentation and to discover and to let and to engage with the dialogue with the artists, how they see it, how they want it, what can be done wrong, what can be done in a crazy way that surprise the audience as well. I think this is a key, to this freedom of expression and possibilities.
Very much so. And there's a research that is currently ongoing alongside the USL University here in London, where they clearly state that the impact of the environment has a way of processing the way we learn. And so how, for example, we set up an exhibition and how we move within that space. So thinking about space and aesthetics, which are elements embedded within the IRL, I was thinking, and this is probably for Fanny to answer, since CADAF, it's one of the very first art fair which is fully going online. How do you feel the fair, for example, is responding to the fact that the aesthetic and the dynamic of the space may vary, given that it doesn't really replicate or emulate the actual physicality of a space, but is fully digitally born?
Yeah, well, that's kind of why we called it an experiment. To be honest, we had no idea how people would react, because that's the first time we've done it. And to give some background, we never intended to be fully digital. We really started with a real life community to build, trust, like, and say we're here to stay. We're not here to make the quick buck and leave, because the last thing you want in the art market, and I think we all agree on that, is to be the new startup who's going to disappear in 2 months. And for me, it was like really about telling the story of these artworks to people, like, taking their hand, going through the exhibit and telling a story. The reason why we just did not go for just a website, there are a few reasons for that. And I'd love to discuss the VR aspect with Sylvain, because I think we disagree on that end, but I'll keep that for in a few minutes. We looked around. We looked at like different platforms. We looked at just having like a website and said, let's wait a minute. Like, there are a lot of online viewing rooms that just it's just a website pretty much. So you're missing a few aspects from that we love going to fairs, is the fact that it's an event where you have a lot of people. It's a social event. So you can see that there are more people. I mean, when you're on the website, you're literally by yourself, and being quarantined and being by yourself in front of the computer sucks. So we said, okay, like, how can we do that without trying, as you said, Boris, like mimicking, like the IRL situation. For example, I always give the example of the bench on Art Basel viewing room. It's a stupid bench. I'm sorry, but it's like, I can't sit on the bench, and it's an ugly bench. Why do you put a bench in front of me? Fine, it's for the 3D aspect. I'm just playing the devil's advocate, but so we try to find like digital native ways of like the feelings and the results that we wanted, not mimic what could have been in real life. And so, for example, like the social aspect and the synchronous aspect of an event is with seeing the people that are in the event with the general chat, with more intimate interactions, with one-on-one chat between the exhibitor and a potential buyer, a chat per booth, because as you would go to a booth, like you would, like talk to people around you, and so on and so forth. I think they were like really the idea, and it's not easy. I mean, like, it's like I have stuff to do, like I'm not always in front of the computer, and we're not going to be able to reproduce everything, it's like that we had IRL. But I think there are other things that appear that are actually truly interesting. For example, like for introvert people, it's easier to interact with galleries, with people that they would like, oh, like such an important person, like I'm a little shy. Also from, I lost my train of thought. It's very early here. Anyway, so this is kind of where we started. But I would love to hear from Sylvain, like on why you chose VR as an exhibition space, because we went against it for CADAF. Yeah, so I'm not going to say more.
That's an interesting topic, which definitely we're going to pass on to Sylvain to respond. In a way, what you, Fanny, highlighted is that there are elements that we've also described at the very beginning of this talk, which are the engagement part, the fun part, the fact that you like to experience art together. Even though the online space, it may allow people with different abilities to experience art in a more friendly way, possibly. And this is something that it can be explored even more. But Sylvain, for you, how did you find the engagement towards the DSL collection when this was exhibited within a physical space and a virtual space? What are the differences and opportunities that you found by exhibiting in a VR environment, for example?
It's a long question. Because it's about the DNA of the collection. From the beginning, we have decided to have a nomadic collection. Very simply, why? Because we think that in terms of sustainability, we cannot afford a physical space. Either the building, either managing a physical space was very difficult. And in 2005, it happens that it was YouTube, and it inspires us to look at the internet to share the collection. And so from this time, we surfed on the digital wave, and we discovered that this wave was opening new types of experiences and new types of I should say, audiences. But we never tried to replicate the white cube. What is interesting for us is that all this technology has to serve art and to bring new experiences. This is a vision from the beginning. And so this vision took us from internet to Second Life to now VR, and VR to video game, and tomorrow it can be hologram, whatever. So it's a vision. Coming back to what you said, I think that we have also to look at things. A part of art, a part of the visual art. If you look at the rest of the culture, and art is part of culture, and culture is part of the leisure industry. If you look at, for instance, the music industry, people go to concerts, but people discover also music through video tube on YouTube, and much more than in concert. And people have the streaming. And the same thing with all types of cultural goods. It's the same thing with cinema. It's the same thing now with newspapers. It's the same thing with books. So the digital experience has always, I shall say, widened the audience of a culture experience and has not replaced another one. So I think this is very, very important, is that not always to try to put yourself in the position where you are fighting against the in-person experience. We are not fighting against the in-person. We learn a lot of works. We are always every weekend in museum. But I think that we have to push the boundaries, especially to push the boundaries with the winds of changes. We live in 2020, and we cannot look at 2020 like we should have looked at art 50 years ago. So, but how you make it relevant, that's another question. That's another question. So for me, it's just a vision, and we'll try to apply this vision slowly and slowly when we think that it's technology which serves art and not on the contrary. This is how we've been to VR. And if you want to speak of the VR, just a few words. For me, VR, personally, I think it's a game changer. Because till today, you are looking at a screen, a cinema, a computer, whatever, an iPhone screen. With VR, it's about interactivity and immersion. So you bring totally a new experience inside, and you don't have physical constraint. But we have to wait that the content and the hardware become more friendly and more disseminated. But I do think that VR is an important way to experience art.
I would like to react quickly to what you said. I think it's very important.
Yes. I was going to actually address that to you now, Boris, and ask you how VR has been proving, if you've tested that within your gallery space, and what kind of engagement you had.
Of course, I mean, we also invest. We had a show in 2017, the Unframed World, that was an exhibition about VR, because of course about artists using VR, because of course VR it's an old technology in a way. I mean, they already started in the 50s and then again in the 80s to experiment with VR, but it's only recently, Sylvain, you mentioned the hardware advances that VR managed to really create. I mean, with HTC Vive and Oculus Rift and Google Cardboard, that really VR break into mainstream, and artists were allowed to use these technologies. And it was an exhibition curated by Tina Sauerländer, who is also a curator who is very much involved in Berlin in the digital field, and especially specialized in VR. And it was a first attempt to have a kind of encompassing exhibition with artists working with VR. Of course, it was a selection of only a dozen artists, but nonetheless, it was interesting, and we learned a lot also with this exhibition, how to engage with the audience. This problem of exhibiting works of VR in which you have only one or two person at a time being able to experience the work. As we invested in hardware for VR, because we knew it was something that we would continuously use, and it's the case. Every exhibition that we present today has very often one or two VR pieces. So and we have to update. Our technician had to learn to deal with this technology. So it brings a lot of challenges, but it's exciting. And I think I agree absolutely with you, Sylvain. It is something that it's happening, and it will continue to grow. Of course, as every technology, it will evolve. We don't know where, but we have to keep up and see. And it is exciting because there is already a lot of interesting content. Not only from a commercial point of view. I mean, there's thousands of video and interactive works and video games, maybe not so much yet, but quite a few. But also artists, a lot of artists use VR more and more everywhere. And this is something that, and they create amazing pieces. And I think that the pieces that are the most surprising and interesting for me are the pieces that are surprising in the way they subvert somehow the expectation of what you are meant to see or to experience in a VR environment. That's what excites me, actually. But I want just to add, just very quickly, Sylvain, you mentioned that YouTube and the process of people seeking pleasure. Absolutely, I agree with you. We have to be aware of that, and the new channels where the people gets information, where the people gets the entertainment, needs to be. We need to be aware of them. I would add maybe just a little note in saying that it is important to be updated. It is important to follow these trends, but it is also important not to let these trends dictate also completely what should happen in the art world. I think we artists should still be able to have a critical point of view and be able also to not completely be overwhelmed by the necessity to engage with the largest amount of audience. Sometimes it's also okay not to engage with everyone, I think.
Can I just
That's a fair point. Yes, of course.
Yeah, I do agree with you. We should never, sell our soul to the devil. But it's always interesting also to try to open new doors, and I shall not say to democratize art, but to bring art to as many people as we can. But I want to say something very interesting about, and it will come back to gamification in a certain way. First, what we have takeaways of our experience of VR. Two things. The first thing is that with VR, we can reach the missing audience. The old people who cannot move very easily with a mask, tomorrow they will be able to go to Shanghai, New York, or Paris to see an exhibition or to listen to a concert. So this is something very important. The other thing is that also we reach another type of missing audience, what the young people. Because with VR, it's like a game. And we made 3 versions of our museum. And the last version was a gamification version of the museum. Because when you played the last version, you were capable to take a sculpture of 6 meters high and throw it away. And so the children were capable to play with these installations. And this is also was a way to move to video games. It means that what we have learned from the VR experience, which means scalability, trying to reach more audience, also bringing into the game, into something, an art experience, what I shall call to be seriously fun, was something which also brought us a step ahead, a step forward, and to look at video games.
Can I add something on that? I think first it's very timely to throw away, statuses and sculptures. So I will try that because Sylvain, I now have my first VR headset, so I'm part of the future now. Just quickly going back to like what you both said, I think this. For me, there's two uses of VR. Obviously, there's like the VR as like a new exhibition space where you can go somewhere and see something, which would be like, I don't know, another VR art piece, or like like a traditional painting, which accessibility wise is incredible. But still, I would say that like for me, we're still in the infancy of the capabilities, and it's absolutely a game changer. Like VR, like I do agree on that part with you, because are you familiar with this company Superhuman X? It's more of a health and study on how VR tricks your brain and has a real direct impact and connection by removing the space that you have between the screen and your eyes, and that's what is very interesting to me. It's like this like closeness and like and what an artist can do with that, and I think right now we're actually missing a lot of curators and people telling the stories of these great pieces of art. And I know, Sylvain, your collection has very like mind-blowing pieces of VR, but like for me this is really the next step of like telling the story of this piece of art, and all the other applications really, because I think VR is still like very much like, oh, it's a gaming thing, like I don't really, it's a Sony showroom type of thing, but it's mind-blowing, and with effects it can have on the brain, it could be revolutionary. However, for the art exhibition spaces, I'm like, I don't know. I'm really, first it's you're limiting yourself to the people who have a VR headset, right? So it's fine if Boris, if you have them in your gallery, like you're like curating the experience, but when you're absolutely just online, that's where like, yes, artists should not reach out like to many people. Art, fairs and institutions, I think that's the goal of like reaching more people. I mean, this is why we tell the stories of all of these artists, is to help them also reach out a bigger audience. And I looked at the VR, I don't know, not software, but platforms who don't require this VR headset. It's very I was very underimpressed. So I don't know, Sylvain, if you like looked at the things that don't require the VR headset, but
no. Fanny, sorry to interrupt you. I think that we have today, we are in front of very important issues. That's why I think that 2020 will not be just an annus horribili, but it will be a changing of era. Yeah. I think that till today, one of the metrics of success of the museum was to have as many people as they can. It was about numbers. And we know that today it's no more possible for many reasons. It's no more possible to have this metric of success. The only way to have metrics of success in a certain way is to take into account the digital visitors. And more museums today will go into digital, and they will have also a digital visitor metrics of success. And this will make them work on the content. And this can also change the whole model of the museums. Because for me today, there is no museum who can survive at the without funds. But if we go into a kind of digital distribution, a kind of freemium model, where, for instance, you can visit 3 rooms of the Louvre, and if you want to visit the rest of the Louvre, you pay $10, and you have a curator who explains you. You can have millions of people paying $10, and it can change the balance. Yeah. Much more people than visiting people. And I think that's the future for me. That's why I'm interested in those new spaces like video games or VR, is because I think we have to expand the audience in order to make the physical stay alive. Because this is the issue today, is how we can make the physical stay alive and not the digital to replace the physical. And I think that the digital can help to make the physical stay alive, like it has done for the music, like it has done for the cinema, and like it has done for the newspaper. So this is my vision that I would like to apply through the collection. It's the idea of trying to find a solution for the question of sustainability for, I shall say, cultural institutions.
But it's still very sorry Boris, but it's still very. I mean, I think, I mean, and right now we have all adapted from all in person to all digital, and of course it's not going to stay all digital. I mean, I hope not, because but the hybrid version of what you're saying, and I love your comparison with movies and music, but with art more in general, not just maybe digital art, like it's still this hybrid version, like it's still very hard to define. And obviously, I don't think we've cracked the code on that one. And I mean, it's still, I can't plan the future, but it's for me, this is what, like, you know, okay, fine, we passed, like we adapted like somehow to only online, but how do we elegantly come back to an in-person exhibition, and that might be the silver lining of COVID-19, is like, how do you go back to a physical exhibition with a better technology? Because I would hate that we just go back to, you know, like forget everything that happened in the quarantine, go back to just like physical exhibitions and then just have a crappy website next to it, because then we lose all these ideas and improvement that we've done in accessibility and telling the story differently. So that's my hope for the future.
I like how you both address those issues. And during a conversation I had prior to this panel with Sylvain, we discussed how contemporary art is somehow questioning the status quo of what we perceive as art, and the fact that it doesn't necessarily have to be referring to a time, to a period of time, but is actually what art is meaning, and how these is keep questioning what we're currently living in terms of values we live by, for example. So Boris, I know that you've been experimenting also on social media and showing art in different ways. How did that prove to you in terms of maintaining always an open mind and keep questioning the meaning of contemporary art?
Well, yes, it's true that, I mean, we have been following all kind of different artistic production since many years, and net art is something that has been around since the beginning of the World Wide Web, at least. But it's true that it's a niche that has been somehow been neglected by many big institutions. And when we were in this situation where we had to participate in an exhibition because of the COVID, we thought, what can we do? How can we also support artists and give some little production help and maybe invite them to produce a work? And this is where we came with this idea of hack networks, which are very small commission to artists to create a piece online, right? But it can be anything. It can be a GIF. It can be a filter. Like I can create a filter for Instagram for us. that people could use and post picture with this filter or videos. Jonas Land created a beautiful piece where you could see the pointer when you visit our website. You could see the pointer leaving traces of all the visitors that were in real time visiting the same website, our website. So and he created a kind of a dialogue. You could create a dialogue between the visitors. So for us, it was a way of giving a platform and giving an open platform to the artists. Let them decide what they want to do. Let them decide how they want to engage with this platform, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, whatever social media, or website, or whatever else. And it was exciting for us to see how many creative ideas they will be able to come up with. And of course, to come back to what you were saying, Sylvain, about the possibility of opening up new models of exhibition online, like the Louvre being visited for free for the first 3 rooms and then paying for the extra room. I see this is a beautiful example of gamification of art, right? Because a lot of video games today are free, but then you have to pay for extra content, or if you want, or you can pay for some object, some aesthetic object. They say it's never pay to win. They say, but it's a beautiful example how we can learn also from this model, economic models, and how can we integrate them if it makes sense for us or not. I'm more interested in the way artists can infiltrate this technology. How can they use these different strategies in a way that surprise us?
I totally agree.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you described, Sylvain, is definitely an interesting new model that most museums should be very much interested in applying towards that collection and the way we're going to be engaging with the audience in the future. COVID has really put a lot of us in a very challenging and uneasy position. But I feel in a way it also brought us to see more opportunities and expand to new technologies that can be applied to engage with art in a more meaningful way. So actually, I would like to ask you all, would you think that such model can be applied within your own projects, such as the collection, the gallery, and an art fair? Would you be open to sort of experiment on such models? Maybe Fanny, you can answer on this one.
Which model are you talking about? Sorry, I didn't catch that concept.
Sure. So the model that something, for example, can be accessed for free, and then there are features that can be entered by a paid subscription or membership. Simply because, as Sylvain described, most museums will struggle to survive after these COVID-19, and we've seen national museums being closed for now several months, and this is definitely proving a challenging position for most government to keep supporting the arts and culture sector. So it was interesting to know from you how you're approaching these with your cultural organizations, collections, fairs, and galleries, and how these could be, for example, applied towards your current models. I hope that's more clear.
Fanny?
Yeah, I mean, I think on the business model side, it's a real question. I mean, I would say before I go into that part, I think also having this new technology and what we experimented with CADAF is that we label ourselves as an art fair, right? Like, I mean, you have to label things for people to know what to expect. However, we actually, with the technology, and maybe we should have realized it in person, but with the technology, we realized that we can go way beyond just partnering with galleries. And obviously, we were partnering with artists because there are a lot of digital artists who don't have representation. But beyond that, we can partner with other art fairs to show their preview on the platform. We can partner with auction houses to show preview or sales results. We can partner with we partner with Mana Contemporary for showing their open studios. And when you think about it, it's a new type of event, right? Even before talking about the business model, it's a new type of event. So I think for us, and I'm going to be very honest with you, Serena, like the goal was to do this experiment this weekend, survive it, and then iterate from it. So I don't have a definite answer on like the business model. What I've been, however, looking at and doing even before COVID-19 is more like this new ways to fund artist projects, commission them by institutions and artist communes, pretty much organizing themselves with this decentralized blockchain technology. Again, I don't think this is a panacea, or I don't know if you say that in English, like panacea, which is the ideal solution for everything in French. But this is where it's very interesting. And I know, like, I've been talking to this collective called Trojan DAO, which is a collective of Greek artists. And even before COVID, everything happened with the financial crisis in Greece. They said, there is no way that the government is going to help us in the next 10 years. So let's not wait for that. Let's organize ourselves and find a way to get funds, get a decision-making system to decide on the right projects and the right governance. And this is what the acronym DAO, decentralized autonomous organization, which is neither decentralized, autonomous, or an organization, but this is kind of what they're trying to achieve. Again, it's still very niche because it can only apply to people within the crypto industry, so not the end result. But I think this is where this is very interesting to look at this. But I have no answer on your question, actually.
And do you all feel that the online version of the IRL will remain very much present after these lockdown periods? And that's a question open to all of you to answer. I know, Sylvain, the DSL collection has been very much present online for quite a long time, but in a way, do you feel that the physicality, going back into museums, since we are now more aware about new ways of engaging with art, will still remain and become a persistent model that will accompany the physicality of exhibitions, for example?
You know, once again, to be online for me is not just about putting works online. I think this is something important for us. To be online also is to become a platform of idea, is to be very strongly related to community, to try to find the new thinkers. It's not just about trying to create an experience of an artwork. I think to be online opens a lot of doors on how to interact with the people, not just only about, I shall say, visual experience, but also how you can bring people to become part of a new way of thinking. And I think this is something which is also very important. Coming back to what you said about the models, I think that what is sure is that the present model of how the museums are financed is not going to last for a long time. I think there is a real survival problem for many museums. Today, everything is questioned in museum, the patrons, the funds, everything is questioned. And now the number of people coming inside. So I think it's a crucial problem. And so they have to find solutions. And the only way to find solution is to try to attract new types of, I shall say, new types of audience, and to make them enough interesting for the audience to pay for that. That's very simple. If they can do it, they will have millions and millions of people, and they can have a very good way to make the offline, which is the most important thing, survive. If not capable, they will disappear. It's very simple. Mm. And it's for me, it's what happened today is clear after this crisis, is that the model cannot be the same after this crisis. Mm-hmm.
Well, yes,
the challenges with the sustainability of projects. And Boris, what are your thoughts about this?
I agree completely with Sylvain that we need to continuously rethink ourselves, and we cannot just sit and think that everything will continue the way we know. But this is always true, right? Not only for the situation today. I don't see it as a dichotomy. I don't see it online versus real life as being one excluding each other. I think both have been existing already since many years. People have been online and offline and in real life and out and in, and also communicating and shifting easily between the two. So I think this will continue. I don't think the museum will close and everything will be online. I think that there is still room for physical works and physical encounters. But yes, I think online will be more and more present. I agree with Sylvain that it should be also not just a bad copy of the real life, but should also be created on the online space. The online experience should be created in a way that it's creative and meaningful for the digital form itself. I also, for us, just to be a bit more specific, we created this series, Hack Networks, and we will continue it. So it's something that we started during the quarantine, but we decided to pursue and to continue indefinitely for the next month. And we are even thinking about new projects that we can do online. We have created one. We're applying for fundings as well, and we hope that it will be realized. So we are continuing. So for us, it was a very positive experience, and we will continue it for sure. But again, we will also continue our exhibition program in our space. And again, one does not exclude the other one. What is interesting in maybe also spaces for communication between the two spaces.
Yeah, I think this is kind of going back to my hybrid version of this. This is kind of where we need to strive toward that, and everybody who is going to be stuck in one or the other are not going to be sustainable in any industry, really, because now you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Maybe you have to turn off the in-person and go fully online, or be more loose and having a. You have to be agile between the two spaces. I think this is like.
And do you see the next edition of CADAF being present online and offline at the same time, Fanny?
Yeah, so I really for that, this is kind of where I'm. Carla from Lumen Price was actually telling us about her exhibition that we opened a few weeks ago, and that is like a bit more local exhibition with a better embedded technology for other people to follow. And for me, this is like the ideal future. It's like it's something in person, but not like where like 5,000 or like 10,000 people or 30,000 people like travel to, because even for our planet, this is not, or our budget, this is not sustainable. And that like you have more local events augmented with better technology. So yeah, we still have the next on the roadmap is still CADAF Paris. So I really hope we make that happen. And Jean-Baptiste from Beaux-Arts is all for it. So no reason why.
That's wonderful to hear. Since we've approached nearly the end of our conversation for today, I wanted to conclude by asking everyone a very simple question that somehow can summarize our thoughts about the gamification of art. And this will be, how can still art be relevant when it's put into a virtual environment? I know we discussed this extensively, and there was much fruitful thoughts in this conversation. But if you were going to summarize in a sentence or two what that means to you, what would that be? And maybe we can start from Sylvain, going around.
First, what we're doing is that, we are a collector. We are not working for the hardware industry. We are not working for a digital company creating video games or creating anything. We just think that we can bring humanism into digital. And we do think that if we want to speak the language of our time and to reach the people of our time, especially the young people and the millennial, we have to find the right balance where it's, as I said to you, seriously fun. And we have to try to open new doors. I don't know what we will find in the new doors, behind the new door, but I think that we have to move with our time and not just to look at the past and to try always to run after the future. And this is what the museums are always doing. They have been always trying to run at the future. They've discovered the online, when today we are at something different, because we are not just about putting something online. We have to work on something much more complex, which is how you bring a real content relevant for people, which is not just to go online. And if you look at museum, the amount which is given to the marketing, digital marketing persons or the digital team is so weak that they will not, if they don't change the way they look at things, they will always be, I shall say, really, running after the future. And we would try to be as much as we can moving. That's it.
Thank you so much for sharing your vision, Sylvain, which I very much agree with. Thank you. And Boris, what that means for you, if you were going to summarize in a...
Absolutely. No, I don't think there is a formula that can be applied to define what is relevant for a digital artwork, and this is true online or offline. Every work of art is relevant for the way it approaches some topics, the way it creates new aesthetics, it asks new questions. So, and this is true whether it's a sculpture, a painting, or a work of virtual reality. So, what makes the work relevant is the specificity of the work itself and how it engages with the audience. For example, there's an artist, Cassie McQuarter, who creates a beautiful, very lo-fi works of games, interactive games. She created, for example, a dungeon crawler where it subverts completely the laws and the dynamics of the typical game, the dungeon crawler. And at the same time, she approaches topic related to gender questions and the image of the woman online, and so on and so on. And so this is why the work is relevant, and not because it is simply a game or simply because it follows some formulas that makes the work relevant or not. So I think, and this is the beauty of art, right? Every work is individual, it's unique, and I think this is something that needs to be respected as well in the way we deal with art. Always have this. Sylvain, you mentioned this open door. I like this metaphor. Every time you engage with a work of art, you open a new door, and you don't know what's on the other side, and that's the beauty of it, I think.
Oh my God, perfect segue to what I was going to say. So awesome. It's not like we repeated it, we rehearsed it, but I have one thing to say, is like bring back the fun in the narrative. It's all about the story of the work, and even more with digital art. Like I always said, online is the trickiest place to actually fully grasp the depths of digital art. With the painting, you have a emotional reaction, like something physical. With something digital, looking at just a small thing, like piece of 2D image, makes nothing. You need to bring back the narratives, the stories, and for me, this is where the fun is. It's like we don't have to I never played video game, but it's like when I tell the stories of this artist, and I see the person who's not from the art world light up, or even online chat being like, "Oh my God, this is amazing." This is a win for me, because it's like, I'm sorry to use this corporate term, but it's true. It's like you explain something that somebody understood and found interesting. So
definitely keeping an open mind towards technologies and how we can engage with new audiences on a global scale is definitely something we should all be more mindful about, especially during this lockdown period. Boris, just a couple of words before we conclude about your new show that I know you've been working on. Can you tell us a bit more about it, when these opens and what we can expect?
Well, we have different shows coming up. So the next one is about feelings and emotion, curated by Sabine Himmelsbach. And then we will have in January a show on counter cartography called The Shaping the Invisible World. There will be some interactive pieces as well in this show. And then, as I mentioned it to you before, I'm working on a show that engages with artists using video games, and this is going to be in summer next year. I cannot tell you much more because I'm still prospecting artists. I have a list of 30, 40 artists already. There is a lot of them. I'm still making the final selection, but for sure, I'm very much interested in in strategies of creating works and interactive games that do subvert somehow the medium itself. This is definitely something that I'm interested in, or some parasitic intervention within gaming environments, for example. I'm happy to tell you more about it once I made a final selection, but for the moment, I could mention a couple of names. I think I already mentioned Cassie McWhorter, for example. That's an artist. I haven't spoke to her yet, but I'm definitely keeping an eye. But you also, Sylvain, you mentioned many artists that you have in your collection that also engaged with video game, Feng Mengbo, for example. There are many other Chinese artists as well that are interested. Yan Cheng, for example, has been working with video game for many years. I saw a work by Tian Xiaolei that is also quite interesting. He has been doing some video games, very political. So there is a lot. There is really a lot, and yes, I think it's an exciting field to discover.
Thank you so much, Boris. And Sylvain, we're very much eager to see your new video game for the DSL collection.
So do I. To tell you the truth, I don't know what it will be. I hope
Can you reveal something to us?
Yes. The only thing I can reveal is it will be very interesting the way it will be done. First, it's done by people who are living in Hong Kong and Shenzhen. Mm-hmm. And I've asked them something is to document the process. It will take 6 months, but from next month, we'll have a blog, and they will document the whole process of creating the work. So what will be very interesting is, and we will collect the work. The work will be put on platform also, and we will collect the work and all the process. And so I think it will be interesting to see the process of how they create the work, and I'm very curious to I shall say to have this experience of an art of work of a video game being documented from the beginning, and the way they have created this. So next month you will have more news on that.
Fantastic, and we will be
Can't wait.
The news. All right, it's been a great pleasure to be talking to all of you, and I wish for all of us to continue this conversation, hopefully in real life very soon. And yes, let's keep an open mind towards technologies and the future of gamification in art. Once again, Boris, Sylvain, Fanny, thank you so much for this lovely conversation, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you, Serena.
Thank you, Serena.
Pleasure.
Merci tout le monde.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.